Hey, welcome to HR Famous, brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies. Named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider, Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com. HR Famous is also brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today. Hey, what's up, friends? The HR Famous podcast. We're back. I'm Chris Dunn. She's Jessica Lee. He's Tim Sackett. Yeah, I like to mix this up. I forget where we left off, so I'm just doing the right thing and going straight to Jessica Lee to say the two words I've been waiting to say to her. What up? Actually, three words. What up, Jessica?
You know what? I prefer what up than how are you? Because, how are we supposed to answer that nowadays? Yeah. I like what up. It's better.
So that's interesting. You're one of the sensitive people that takes just a broad-based nothing and says, how am I? Well, that's interesting, Chris. Let's break that down. I love that.
But everyone lies. I'm good, and you're not really good. And when I say I'm not so good, then people don't really want to talk about it. So let's not ask each other.
I actually just had that conversation today with my banker. He calls me and he's like, "How are you doing?" I go, "Good." And then it went right into the exact problem I'm having. I'm like, "Here's a big problem I've got."
So the other voice you hear is Tim Sackett. So Tim, I'll do the right thing here and say, how is therapy going?
It's going great.
It's going great. You're learning a lot about yourself.
I actually I tweeted that out the other day that I did this whole therapy thing, and then I was talking to the my old monster.com Trumposaurus that sits in your office on the desk with collecting dust. Do you guys remember those? The Trumposaurus?
Yeah, right. Yeah, purple. Yeah, they were purple, right?
Yeah, the nose thing, and remember the SHRM ladies would stand in line for 4 hours to get their hands on one of those Trumposaurus.
And then at the end of a SHRM conference at the airport, you knew who the HR people were because they were all carrying their Trumposaurus. Everyone.
Shout out. Is Monster.com still in business? I don't remember.
They are. They are. I actually saw them on a spreadsheet the other day. They're still in business. Okay. And by the way, speaking of conference trinkets and things like that, I'm not driven this way. I never take the stuff. And one of the things that's amazing to me is when you're at a big show like SHRM Annual, to see the line on the second to last day or last day, at the shipping center. In a big conference center, because people are just mailing the swag back. I never got it. Jessica, you seem like an anti-swag person to me. Is that true?
That's true.
You didn't take the swag.
No, but the most clever booth that I saw was this one booth that had one of those you get into it and there's money flying around in the air and you got to snatch the money. I thought that was clever. That's the only booth I ever liked.
Tim's holding up all his swag, and I think I saw a SHRM dash CP coffee cup. Tell us more, Tim Sackett.
No, I mean, so I will tell you, being that I get to travel and go to a lot of conferences, and my staff usually is always back working their butts off. I tend to bring back a lot of stuff, and it's like piranha in the break room when I jump off a giant bag of stuff. And so it's always funny. They love to get in all the little stuff, and some of the stuff's really good. Some of the stuff is kind of worthless and crappy, but I will tell you, they love the notebooks and pens most of all. That stuff goes right away.
So you lay down all the swag.
Yeah. Right by the coffee machine.
Stuff we all get. What's the last thing? What is the equivalent of, for me, it's candy corn. What's the last thing on the counter that nobody will take? I'm assuming it's something you just showed us.
No. It's the last thing is usually the tote bags. Like how many? Like after a while, you just don't need some crappy tote bag with like Paycor on it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Paycor,
of
course.
Yeah, I think I have something on here like with Paycor on it. I don't know.
Okay, speaking of like SHRM Annual and SHRM CP, we're going to talk about Johnny Taylor, the CEO of SHRM, coming up in just a second. Before we do that, I got one other like thing I want to hit. So this is like roughly a week ago, and there was a Senate hearing, and I'll set it up for the listeners, and we'll share the link, the YouTube link, in the show notes. So in the middle of, so they were doing a hearing on the Postmaster General, what is it? Louis DeJoyce, like they did testimony and all the stuff that's going on with the Postal Service. That's for another day. But in the middle of that testimony, in Congress on, I guess it was like roughly by the time you hear this about a week and a half ago, Delaware Senator Tom Carper experienced the kind of tech hiccup that so many of us have had while working from home over the last few months. And Carper, not realizing his screen and audio were being recorded for everyone to see. And if you haven't seen it, like go to the show notes, click on the link, because we're going to talk about what this means for Tom Carper. He didn't hold back his frustration. So Jessica, after being called on to speak and almost missing his window, like in a congressional hearing, and by the way, I think senators really value that, especially if you're a Dem getting ready to like load up on the Postal Service these days. He almost missed his window. Carper suddenly appeared, and as he appeared, he was directing his ire over his problems on his technical side to a masked staffer. Shout out for wearing the mask. Yeah. Because Tom Carper's a little bit on the older side. So that's required. And he starts basically, he wasn't yelling it. Like what I'm reading you says he was intoned, but basically he was abruptly saying the F word. So I'm just going to say F, Jessica. He said, so he turns away from the camera at the staffer who's coming in, and like a caveman, just basically says F. Hold on, he didn't yell. It's like F, F, F. After which this poor, I call him a kid, he's probably in his mid-30s, fiddled with Carper's setup, which, by the way, obviously had already been restored. So Jessica, I wrote about this on The Capitalist, and basically it was the old adage for me that my mom or my grandma, somebody important in my life, told me, as I'm sure someone told you, if you want to know what someone's really about, just watch them when they think nobody's watching. Any reactions? I call him the worst boss ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think recruiters and HR people all know this. Like, you also want to see how that candidate is when they come in for their interview and they're interacting with the admin or the security guard, receptionist.
Yeah,
exactly. So similar thing. I mean, I tend to agree with you on that. I do know, though, that some people believe, and there have been studies out there, that people who curse more tend to be smarter, have higher IQs. Like, have you guys seen those articles? Like, there's articles out there about that.
Jessica, hold on. Jessica, is this a Gallup poll? Because I feel like you're going to give me a Gallup poll, maybe on engagement.
Yeah, 212.
No. I've just seen people quote that, but I'm not a big cursor myself, actually. So it's quite a turnoff. And I like one F-bomb is fine. 3 F-bombs, like, come on, man. Like, it can't be that bad.
Tim, I think the thing that got me is I'm okay, to Jessica's point. I'm okay, like with single F-bomb. You're frustrated. All that we know he said to the dude was 3 staccato F-bombs like a caveman. I mean, he's maybe, what was the boss on The Simpsons?
Oh, yeah. The old guy. Shoot.
I'm going to have to look it up. Smithers was his assistant. So go ahead. What was it?
No. Yeah, okay. I was thinking Smithers as well. So
what's your take on this? And I got a couple more things, and we're going to get on. We're going to talk about Johnny Taylor at SHRM.
Truly, the most embarrassing leadership moment you can ever have is you acting like a complete idiot in front of your staff, or when someone finds that out. I have one of those moments in my career, and so I tend to get really quiet when I'm really upset around my staff. and they kind of know that.
Right.
And because of this situation, I'm in my car driving with a subordinate, and I have somebody else on the phone that has completely effed up a project, right? And so actually it wasn't a subordinate that was with me. It was like another peer, right? And this is in a corporate function. And I'm on the car phone. We're driving. We're going through this thing, trying to fix it. And then I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you later. And I think I'm hung up. I'm not. And I just go off on this person. And all of a sudden I hear over the speakers, I'm still on.
Oh God. Oh.
Hey, by the way,
I just felt so awful.
Hey, the most important thing in that story, Tim, was that an installed car phone? Because that sounds dope.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was the old bag phone early in the career.
Baller alert!
I think it was like, you know how you had the phone thing with the cord on the dash, and then like the actual phone system was in the trunk, like, and it ran wires.
So
cool.
Going back to our buddy. So by the way, the boss on The Simpsons, people have probably already texted me on this. It's Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
Mr. Burns. So the boss is Delaware Senator Tom Carper. So, what's interesting is, first of all, people took still shots of like him on video after the thing. And I would just say he's kind of an intense dude. The other thing that's really interesting, Jessica, I'll get both your takes on this and we'll move on. I'm going to give you my take now. I'll get your take. Twitter was quick just to like laugh it off and said, who among us, maybe to Tim's point, has not been there, or that's so 2020. I would tell you, like, I get it if you throw an F-bomb out and then you kind of ask for help. I just don't know that I think, Tim's story is true. You start talking about somebody, you get it. But it just to turn to somebody and kind of go abruptly F 3 times, like you're grunting almost, just says like best boss ever. Like I'm sorry, worst boss ever. I just can't get past it. Jessica?
Well, I would hope that you actually would be appreciative that they didn't go cancel culture on the gentleman for his 3 F-bombs, so I do think that there's something to be said for that. One nuance is that it's not like he was looking at the guy saying, F you, like effing fix this, you F-chard. Like there's a lot of different things he could have said with that F word. Right? So,
I think that's exactly what he's saying in 3 simple words.
He's just a caveman. Couldn't get more syllables out.
3 simple words, and also the way his body was turned. And by the way, like, it's just an observation. Like, I don't want to cancel anybody. Like, Tom Carper, like, rock on. You do the Mr. Burns thing. You've got Smithers right there to fix your camera. Tim, what do you got? And then we'll move on.
I would have loved, I think the one thing, like, from a leader that you would hope that he would have known once he knew he was live, he should have said, he made a joke about 2020. And also, you know what? My staff works their tail off to make sure these things don't happen. And yet, it still happens. And at least a shout out, like, to try to save. Otherwise, that guy can't wait to get out. Like, how do I get with another staffer at this point? Because this guy's awful.
And you talk about fat fingering the Zoom controls. Mm-hmm. So he's got Smithers on the side of him, and he's been trained like 30 times. You just click this button when they call your name. He can't get it done, and in his panic, he finally gets it done as he turns around to go F 3 times like a caveman grunt. Tom Carper, you keep doing you. I'm not out to cancel you, but you are the worst boss ever. Indeed will not help you. You're the worst boss ever. Okay, let's move on. So I titled we titled the show, Is Johnny Taylor Good for HR? And for the uninitiated, Johnny Taylor is the CEO at SHRM. Hey, we're asking this question because I think we've talked around this a little bit. We're going to talk like real directly for 15 or 20 minutes about it. And Business Insider Premium Edition, of which we all subscribe, no big deal, Business Insider. But a lot of people didn't have access to this and is making the rounds last week. And I'm just going to read from this Business Insider Premium article that's titled How SHRM CEO Johnny Taylor Transformed the largest HR organization. So I'm just going to give you highlights. SHRM's the largest HR organization. Johnny Taylor Jr. became CEO of SHRM in December 2017. Taylor has turned SHRM around financially. In 2016, I didn't know this, by the way, SHRM took a loss of $5.6 million. In 2018, net income, total revenue minus total expenses was $14.1 million to the positive. So all this from the article. Taylor has conducted multiple rounds of layoffs at SHRM. Taylor often speaks about SHRM's unique and confrontational company culture. It probably should be organizational culture, and says that anyone who doesn't feel it suits them should consider working elsewhere. Many of the former employees that Business Insider spoke to used the word fear, quote unquote, to describe SHRM's culture. The former SHRM employees also said they felt pressured to return to the office during the coronavirus pandemic. Also in July, management learned that an employee who had been in the office tested positive for COVID. The informed staff didn't learn about it until the following day. Statement emailed to Business Insider, SHRM said, Johnny Taylor was brought into SHRM to boldly transform and elevate the organization because of market demand on the HR profession to change. It was Taylor's mission to change strategy, and as necessary, the talent that drives that strategy. So, Tim, I'm going to throw it to you first on this one. You know, the article, I will tell you, like, Jessica, when you were out, like in Zion, like doing whatever it is you do, like in desert and cliffs and driving like off-road Jeeps, St. George.
You mean me?
Yes, Tim. I'm sorry, but when Jessica and I did our own podcast, we actually talked about an article, and I said, "Hey, reporters do your job." I actually thought this one was pretty balanced, even with the way that it led. Now, one of the things is they talked to 12 people at SHRM out of 400, 7 of which who had left. What's your overall take on the article related to? I can't really call it a takedown piece on Johnny Taylor because it shared some positives, but also shared some negatives.
So, you know, one is, there's going to be people out there, you know, they're going to say I'm a Johnny Taylor fanboy. I'm not a fanboy. I like Johnny as the CEO of SHRM more than any other CEO they've had because they've had some really kind of underperforming CEOs. And I take a look, let's face it, SHRM is a freaking ATM machine. Like they could print cash. And when I found out that they lost money for 2 consecutive years before Johnny came in, that's mismanagement at a colossal level. I mean, everything SHRM does is it makes money on pretty much. Like there's no reason they shouldn't make money. And so if you're losing money, there's really bad mismanagement that's happening. So of course, Johnny coming in and making all these changes, people that were living through the kind of fat, happy time. So spend like crazy. Who cares? Do whatever you want. Don't perform because we're going to keep paying you. Of course, they're going to be unhappy with this. And I'll say that I have a lot of professional relationships with people at SHRM, and I respect them and their work. And I think the people that, you know, that I'm friendly with are all very hardworking folks. And I think they've all kept their jobs. But it doesn't shock me at all that Johnny coming in, he was known coming in as a dynamic, strategic, very smart, you know, business, you know, executive that was going to come in and run this like a real business. And if we go back and we think about 2010, 2012, 15, before, the biggest gripe about SHRM was that they were so disconnected from actual business and they were old and traditional and they didn't get it. And he comes in and does all of this. And now he's taking flack because he's trying to transform a culture that was basically, you know, underperforming. And so I'm not shocked by this. And I'm actually excited that he's come in and run in, you know, and turn things around financially. And again, he's done some other things. You know, KD, you and I are both taking a look at their most recent, you know, program about frontline managers and some of the stuff they're doing there as well. I think they're trying to get out of the box of what they traditionally have. Jessica, what was your take?
So I know that there are people who feel like you can't like bifurcate a person, their performance as a business leader, from their attitudes, affiliation to the current president that's in the Oval Office. So I recognize that that is a challenge for some people, but I do think when you try to bifurcate, if you believe that you can, and look at like performance in the job, like the results that have been made, and if you can put aside the other piece and you're just objectively looking at some of the others, there's a part of me that feels like some of the things, even the article, that I think are potentially intended to like paint a negative light about the culture, him, what they're going through as an organization. Those aren't unique to him. They're not unique to,
No.
Like I wouldn't even say these are things that bad leaders that are symptoms of a bad leader. These are things that every company is dealing with. People don't want to speak up when there's an issue, mishandling of coronavirus. I mean, everyone is dealing with this stuff. Like, I think there are cultural issues that are not unique to them and that don't necessarily make them a bad place to work. I think there's mishandling of things that everyone is dealing with because no one knows how to heck to navigate in this current environment, and there are going to be mistakes. And so I don't know, some of the nitpicking on those things for me, just, I don't know that they're always fair. No one is perfect. No leader is perfect. Organizations are figuring it out. And I think, like, to your point, Tim, like the turnaround on some of these things is like, you can't deny like some of those results. And so it's hard for me to really put those, to the side and say, nope, still a horrible person. That all being said, like, full transparency, I don't pay to be a SHRM member these days. I haven't paid in a really long time. And there's also a part of me that just feels like, does it really matter? Do I need SHRM in order to be a successful HR person? Can I develop, up and coming HR people in the absence of it? I don't know if I actually personally care that much about who's the CEO of SHRM at the end of the day. I don't need it.
Optimize your business with a Workforce AI Edge powered by Vizier. Make smarter decisions and achieve better outcomes with real-time AI insights delivered to every people leader. Explore more at visier.com.
So, by the way, I don't think the membership does either. I think the vast majority of the membership is completely happy with SHRM and their membership and the stuff that they're being delivered. And I don't think they know who the CEO is because it's the face of the organization. I don't think they care.
No.
Hey, what's up? It's your friendly moderator for this conversation.
Oh, hey.
You have an opinion.
No, so I'm coming back in. So I want to remind you that we want to title this is Johnny Taylor Good for HR. So Jessica, I think your comments, do you need SHRM? I think you would say you don't. I think all of us could survive without SHRM. But is Johnny Taylor, we're kind of doing this referendum on him. Is he good? Jessica, you mentioned, a lot of people have a sense that he's aligned with the Trump administration. I don't know his political persuasion. I'm assuming because, I don't know. Right? I mean, because I would assume he's a Republican, but I don't know that. I think that automatically creates, to your point, a lot of angst, Jessica. And, it goes on to talk a lot about the challenge culture under Johnny, which you both have already said this. Sounds a lot like a normal company, especially in turnaround mode, with how they've turned it around financially. I think what I want to do, with the time we have left, is I want to take you through. I want you to add to this. I did something called Johnny's W's for wins and Johnny's L's for losses, because we all take some L's. If you're in a big enough position, you're going to take some L's, et cetera, et cetera. Here's what I've got. So I did a balanced scorecard on Johnny. And Johnny, if you're out there listening, what up? As I said to Jessica-Lee earlier.
What up, Johnny?
What up, Katie?
So, but it's a balanced scorecard. So here's what I got for Johnny's W's. Financial turnaround. That's a turnaround of 19, 20 million. You cannot, the board has to be happy with that. You cannot ignore that because that was not present before. The other W that's not really Johnny's W, but it's out there, is he's a diverse leader of an organization getting stuff done. And clearly he is unafraid of a lot of this. And I think that matters. I'll give you a couple more things and I'll comment on the W's and then we'll go to the L's. He did this huge thing at SHRM National in 2019 on recidivism, basically people with records, getting them employed for the good of America. Like, I got to be honest with you, Johnny, if you're listening to this, you would not stop talking about it. Like at 2019, like annual SHRM, like I heard you speak 2 or 3 times, you would not stop talking about it. And I got to tell you, it actually like moved me, not emotionally, but it moved me to really pay attention and say, I was probably a moderate on that issue. And it moved me to be super positive to that cause. And on the offshoot, I launched my book at SHRM National. I was just kind of like, can I get some of this stage time, Johnny? I'm joking. And then the last thing I got for you in terms of W's, and JLee, I'll come to you first, and then we'll go to Tim, is I think previous leaders started this, but the SHRM platform, it's been around with like 7 or 8 years with DEI programming. They've got a conference. They do stuff on it. You can't discount that. You can't say, because I'm going to get to the L's, and one of those is a response to George Floyd and some of the things that went there. I'll get to the L's first. JLee, anything to add to the W's that I missed?
Yeah, one of the things that has bothered me over the years is like, I don't have cable anymore, but when I did, I would always see on CNN commercials for SHRM. And every time a commercial would come on, I would always say to Bobby, like, who the F cares about a SHRM commercial on CNN? Why are dollars being spent in this way? This is not how you elevate the profile of HR. And that's like the baseline of like the argument there. And the reason why I bring it up is because I don't think you should have to spend, paid media dollars in order to elevate the profile of an industry or a profession. And so what I will give to him is his visibility, his involvement with an administration, and being around the table, despite the fact that I don't like this administration. And I think, that's nothing, your dollars don't buy that. Your media dollars don't buy that. And so I think that is worth a W. My hope would be if a different administration were in, the Oval Office and in the White House, that, that would continue. But I think that's worth something.
Yeah, I think I was one of those W's because I think I don't know what council it is or what committee or whatever he was named to. I know Ivana, Trump's daughter, was the one that was on there as well, but so was Tim Cook from Apple. Like, I mean, big, giant, diverse names, huge companies, and to have SHRM at the table for that, I think is a really big win and a big deal.
Yeah, like I think free media impressions, to JLee's point, matters. You expect that out of a leader. Tim, any other? I kind of took probably a lot of the wind in terms of the W's. Any other W's before I move on to L's?
No, I mean, again, I think you and I have been to a lot of SHRM conferences over the years. And like you said, here is a leader that is very charismatic on stage and gets people to listen, gets people energized, gets people excited, unlike any other SHRM leader that we've seen on stage. And so I do think for the membership, there's a high confidence there based on that. His light shines pretty bright. Now, does that really truly mean anything? Well, perception is reality for a lot of members. And if they're more willing to sign up again because they went to national and saw this really dynamic leader on stage talking, hey, that's a big win.
Let me go to Johnny's L's or SHRM's L's under Johnny's leadership. A couple things. First of all, and we've mentioned some of these. JLee, you mentioned, for some people that are concerned about Johnny being the leader of SHRM and pretty vocal on it, the alignment with the Trump administration is an issue. JLee, I think you just mentioned the fact that you would hope, if the White House flips, that he would be involved with that White House. I think some of that depends on whether he gets invited, which will be interesting. But I don't know, I don't know if he's a Republican or a Democrat. I really don't know. I would assume he's a Republican. That may be incorrect. I don't know. To your point, he may be involved and he may be seeking just the free media impressions. Real quick, 2 other things that are real clear. First of all, I think SHRM was slow in their response to George Floyd, the aftermath of George Floyd. And I think if Johnny and the board that Johnny reports to, I think they would say, hey, you know what? I wish we would have came out with something earlier. A lot of this comes down to they came out with a blue ribbon commission to get people involved, and they shared, resources, for that aftermath, but they did it late Tim, I'm thinking they did it a month, 6 weeks, like after the aftermath. I don't have that at the top of my head, but the criticism
that long, but you're right. It was way past most people making the response. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would tell you too, that part of my perception of what they got caught up in is this, really what's going on in the world with the organization versus the saying and the words of Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of hubbub about that. I'm not an expert. Okay. Like I'm comfortable like saying Black Lives Matter because they do. I think you can say that and reserve how you want to view the blacklivesmatter.org, but they did not like say those words. So I think that's out there. So I think they were slow in that response. I think that's one thing, if they could have a do-over, that they would do. And then the other thing I have, and then you guys can add to this, is when Johnny went hard after recidivism in terms of getting people with records employed. They had like, I'm remembering this. They had a group of like 300 companies that were in on that, like as a partnership, right? Which is all good stuff. And then as one of, I think, 3 organizations, Tim, they had the Koch brothers first and foremost as one of like 3 kind of companies on the marquee that were going to help with that. And that organization is aligned with a lot of conservative views. Some would say ultra conservative views. Some people would say alt-right. And I think the fact that they were on the marquee kind of took away from all of this. Like, I thought it was pretty unbelievable, the message he had on recidivism. Tim?
No, yeah. I mean, that's all it was. Again, it really kind of went back to, what is a perceived relationship with the Trump administration. And I think this was just one more piece that people started to kind of try to connect dots that could be there, maybe not there, who knows. The other piece with George Floyd was the message that first came out from SHRM wasn't only just not acknowledging Black Lives Matter. It was also their acknowledgement about police officers and all of that in the original message, which was also, really kind of going against the grain of what most organizations were saying at that moment. And again, like I try to play the middle here and say, look, if I'm SHRM, if I'm the association, I'm the CEO of the association, I have HR leaders from municipalities that are hiring police officers, that are supporting police officers, that understand the difficulty of that. I have a brother who's a state police officer. I understand he puts his life on the line every day when he steps into that vehicle. And so it's really difficult, I think, for you to just ignore that and say, oh, it's all about police. No, it's about bad police. And that message didn't come across well when they first did it. So that I would put that definitely on could do better for sure. I think if in hindsight, Johnny would want to, change that message a bit. But for the most part, man, I don't think the board could have asked for more wins from where they've gotten. And I think to me, the shocking thing is just the financial aspect of where SHRM was and where it is now.
Well,
guess what? You're losing millions of dollars. People are going to be laid off.
Yeah.
That's the reality of business.
That's the ultimate scorecard. Jessica, anything to like kind of close this out, and then I'll close both of you out with a single question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the L that, probably you got to talk about is like perception is reality. I definitely believe that. I don't know, whether it's true or not in terms of, there's this perception of him not engaging with the community, hearing their concerns. And there is a small, vocal group of people who feel like he isn't doing the best job as CEO, that SHRM is, lost its way, or that they're putting, certain interests first over others. And so I do think that's an L and something that, needs to get addressed at some point, that like you do have this population that is vocal. Maybe they're influential, maybe they're not. I don't know. But, certainly that perception is out there that he doesn't care and that it's all about him and it's all about, continuing to, focus on profits for the organization. And so, that's not good. That's out there, but you have to, always really figure out, is that the majority speaking or is that just squeaky wheels, which I don't know about.
Okay. So I'm going to get you out of here with the following question. It's kind of where we started, right? Is Johnny Taylor good for HR? And that's, if the folks from SHRM and Johnny are listening, that's an unfair question, but we just went for it. And I think, all of us have W's and L's in our careers, right?
Totally.
We've got things we would want to get back. I'll go first because it's only fair that I go first. I think Johnny Taylor is good for HR. I think if the organization is more financially stable, then I think he's good for HR because that organization's better prepared to meet the future. I would hope, like with some of the L's that have happened under Johnny's watch, I would think the board's probably given a lot of feedback on that. I think Johnny probably has learned a lot from all of this, but I think he's good for HR. Is he perfect? No. Are people talking about him? Yes. And I think the greater good served by Johnny being in the seat. Tim?
Yeah, I think he's good. I think partly because, again, like you said, if you strengthen SHRM as an organization, as an association, it's better for HR. Turnaround leaders are never highly popular. And, when you take over an organization that's in tough financial times and then heading into tough social and economic times, health times, and the pandemic, it's going to be even more difficult. And I think for the most part, he's done a good job leading, the association through that. You're always going to have people that are upset about it. But for the most part, when I go to local and state level SHRM, like association meetings and talk and do the webinars with SHRM membership and stuff like that, it's overwhelmingly people still love SHRM that are members. And I think that speaks for itself.
Jessica, your thoughts as a non-SHRM member. Both Tim and I are SHRM members, so this is coming from a non-SHRM member.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two questions here. Is he good for SHRM and is he good for HR? Is he good for SHRM? It's hard to argue that he is bad for SHRM as an organization. If we're talking about HR, I feel like does it really matter? I don't know if it does.
All right, talked about a lot today. I'm going to get us out of here. Shout out to Delaware Senator Tom Carper, a.k.a. Mr. Burns. You keep doing you on Zoom meetings. Interesting conversation about Johnny Taylor and SHRM. For Jessica Lee and Tim Sackett, I'm Chris Dunn. This is HR Famous. Until next time, we are out.